The Strait of Hormuz is a 21-mile-wide chokepoint, where 30% of the world's seaborne oil passes daily, and Iran has spent 4 decades preparing to close it against the United States Navy's Fifth Fleet. This isn't a question of whether the U.S. Navy is more powerful. A single American destroyer carries more firepower than Iran's entire surface fleet. The question is whether American technological superiority matters in shallow, confined waters where Iranian mines, missiles, and suicide boats can swarm from coastlines 20 miles away, while American carriers must stay outside the Persian Gulf to survive. This is every weapon system both navies would deploy in the Strait of Hormuz, the geographic nightmare that favors defenders over attackers, and the brutal cost calculation that makes this the most dangerous naval chokepoint on Earth. We start with what Iran built specifically to sink American ships in these waters: Iranian anti-ship missiles. Iran's entire naval strategy revolves around missiles launched from positions the U.S. Navy can't easily strike. Mobile coastal batteries hidden in mountainous terrain, hardened bunkers along the coastline, and fast attack craft that disperse among civilian traffic. These aren't precision weapons competing with American technology. They're area denial weapons designed to make the strait so dangerous that tanker insurance rates skyrocket and global oil markets panic. Nor anti-ship missile, the Chinese C-802 derivative that Iran produces domestically and deploys on coastal batteries, small boats, and aircraft. With 170-kilometer range and sea-skimming flight profiles, these can hit ships transiting the strait from launch positions along the Iranian coastline. Hezbollah used these against Israeli warships in 2006, proving the weapon works when employed correctly. Iran has hundreds of these positioned in hardened sites and mobile launchers along the strait. American ships can destroy launch sites with counter-battery fire, but mobile launchers scatter and hide among civilian infrastructure, where strikes create collateral damage. Qadr anti-ship missile, the improved variant with 300-kilometer range that puts the entire Persian Gulf within reach from shore-based launchers. Iran doesn't need ships to threaten American vessels. They launch from land, and the missiles fly sea-skimming profiles that complicate interception. These carry 200-kilogram warheads sufficient to mission-kill destroyers and sink smaller vessels. Modern U.S. defensive systems can intercept these, but Iran launches 50 simultaneously. From dispersed positions, defenses face the mathematics of limited interceptors and finite engagement time. Khalid Far's anti-ship ballistic missile, the anti-ship ballistic missile concept that China pioneered and Iran acquired through technology transfer. These launch like tactical ballistic missiles, climb to altitude, then dive on ships with terminal guidance. The concept terrifies naval planners because ballistic missiles move faster than cruise missiles and approach from angles that complicate interception. Whether Iran's guidance systems can actually track moving ships and feed that data to missiles in flight remains questionable, but even unsuccessful attacks force American ships to maneuver and consume interceptors. Persian Gulf anti-ship ballistic missile, the improved variant with better guidance and longer range. Iran keeps unveiling incremental improvements, suggesting active development programs. Whether these work as advertised against maneuvering warships employing countermeasures is unknown, but the threat forces American defensive planning to account for ballistic missiles alongside cruise missiles and aircraft. RAD anti-ship missile, the long-range variant claiming 360-kilometer reach. These would engage American ships operating in the Gulf of Oman, extending Iran's anti-access zone beyond the strait itself. Even if accuracy is poor, forcing American ships to operate at maximum range from Iranian coastline achieves strategic effect. Moving on to the swarm boats that would attack in mass. Fast attack craft. Iran operates hundreds of small boats, some barely larger than speedboats, armed with machine guns, rockets, and anti-ship missiles. Individually, these are mosquitoes. In coordinated swarms of 50-100 boats attacking simultaneously from multiple directions, they create targeting nightmares for American defensive systems, designed to engage sophisticated threats, not mass attacks by small craft. The Revolutionary Guard Navy operates these separately from the regular Iranian Navy. And IRGC doctrine emphasizes martyrdom operations where boat crews accept death to close with American ships and detonate explosives. Sina-class fast attack craft, the missile boats carrying anti-ship missiles that provide standoff engagement capability. These are slightly larger than pure swarm boats, armed with Noor or Qadr missiles. In a shooting war, these would launch missiles from positions near the Iranian coastline, then attempt to escape into coastal waters before American counterfire arrives. Survival isn't guaranteed, but mission completion matters more than survival in Iranian doctrine. Common class fast attack craft, the French-designed missile boats from the 1970s that Iran still operates because boats carrying anti-ship missiles remain useful regardless of age. These patrol the strait during peacetime and would launch missiles from dispersed positions in conflict. Paykop-class fast attack craft, the domestically produced missile boats that Iran builds to maintain capability without foreign suppliers. Quality is questionable, but these carry missiles and create additional targets that American forces must track and engage. Bogmar-style speedboats, the small boats that would conduct suicide attacks against American ships operating close to shore. These carry explosives or rockets, race toward targets at high speed, and detonate on impact, or near misses. The USS Cole attack in Yemen demonstrated what small boat attacks can achieve against unprepared vessels. American ships in the strait would be on high alert, but defending against dozens of simultaneous attacks from multiple directions creates overwhelming complexity. Moving on to submarines that would operate in shallow Persian Gulf waters. Kilo-class submarines. 3 Russian diesel-electric submarines that represent Iran's most capable underwater platforms. These are old, maintenance without Russian support is questionable. But in shallow Persian Gulf waters, even old submarines are dangerous. Kilo-class boats are quiet when running on batteries, and the confined waters limit American anti-submarine warfare advantages. These would lay mines, conduct reconnaissance, and potentially attack American ships with torpedoes if opportunities arise. American anti-submarine forces would hunt these aggressively, but finding diesel submarines in shallow, noisy waters filled with commercial traffic is exponentially harder than open ocean operations. Fateh-class submarines. The domestically designed diesel submarines that Iran built to reduce dependence on foreign suppliers. These are small, designed specifically for Persian Gulf operations, and carry torpedoes and mines. Whether these are actually combat effective or propaganda pieces is debated, but they exist and would deploy in conflict. Gaudier-class midget submarines. The mini-submarines designed for coastal operations, mine laying, and special forces insertion. Too small for open ocean work, these are perfect for Persian Gulf operations, where shallow water and confined areas suit small platforms. Iran operates dozens of these because quantity matters when defending confined waters. American forces must track and prosecute each one individually, creating workload challenges. Nahal-class midget submarines, another mini-submarine variant that Iran produces domestically. These would lay mines in shipping channels and conduct reconnaissance without being easily detected by American sensors, optimized for larger platforms. Moving on to mines, potentially Iran's most effective weapon. Naval mines. Iran has stockpiled thousands of mines and can deploy them rapidly throughout the Strait and Persian Gulf. Modern mines include bottom-mounted types that activate when specific acoustic signatures pass overhead, floating mines that drift with currents, and rocket-propelled rising mines that launch from the seabed when sensors detect targets. Mining the strait would be Iran's immediate response to conflict, because mines create strategic effects disproportionate to cost. Even a single tanker sunk by mine causes insurance rates to spike and shipping companies to refuse transit. Clearing mines takes weeks or months using specialized mine warfare vessels that must operate in waters where Iranian missiles and boats remain active threats. This is asymmetric warfare at its most effective, cheap weapons creating expensive problems. EM. 5-2 mines. The rocket-propelled rising mine that sits on the seabed and launches towards surface ships when sensors detect them overhead. These are difficult to clear because they don't require contact. The mine launches from hundreds of feet away and closes rapidly. Sawed-off mines. The bottom-mounted influence mine that activates based on magnetic, acoustic, or pressure signatures. These can distinguish warships from commercial vessels and activate only for military targets, making detection during peacekeeping mine clearance operations difficult. MDM. 6 mines. The moored mine that floats beneath the surface tethered to seabed anchors. These create physical barriers in shipping channels requiring mine clearance before ships can safely transit. Muvj-class frigates. The domestically produced light frigates representing Iran's most modern surface warships. These are small by Western standards, about 1,500 tons, and lightly armed, but they carry anti-ship missiles and provide surface presence. In a shooting war with the US Navy, these would be destroyed quickly, but they contribute to the layered defense, making the strait dangerous. Alvand-class frigates. The British-built frigates from the 1970s that Iran inherited from the Shah, and somehow keeps operational through cannibalization and domestic manufacturing of replacement parts. These are museum pieces pressed into active service, because Iran owns them. They carry guns and old missiles, providing minimal capability. Jamarin-class destroyers. Iran's designation for what Western navies would call corvettes. These are small vessels with limited capability, but they patrol the Gulf, and would launch missiles if given the opportunity. Moving on to the US Navy forces that would operate in theater. Carrier Strike Group. A full carrier strike group typically doesn't operate inside the Persian Gulf because the confined waters limit maneuvering and make the carrier vulnerable. Instead, carriers operate in the Gulf of Oman or Arabian Sea, launching aircraft that fly into the Gulf for strikes while the carrier maintains standoff distance. But the support ships, destroyers, cruisers, submarines, would operate in and around the strait as necessary. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. The U.S. Fifth Fleet operates multiple destroyers in the region continuously. These carry 9.6 vertical launch cells loaded with SM-2, SM-6, and Tomahawk missiles, plus anti-submarine weapons. In confined waters of the strait, destroyers would be positioned to intercept Iranian missiles, engage surface threats, and provide air defense. But operating close to Iranian coastline means these ships would be under constant threat from shore-based missiles launching from positions that are difficult to strike without causing collateral damage in populated areas. Ticonderoga-class cruisers. One or more cruisers would likely deploy with the strike group, providing air defense command and control with Aegis systems that track hundreds of targets simultaneously. The 122 vertical launch cells carry deep magazines of interceptors for sustained defensive operations. Littoral combat ships. These are designed specifically for operations in confined coastal waters like the Persian Gulf, though their combat effectiveness against determined opposition is questionable. LCS vessels conduct mine countermeasures, surface warfare, and patrol operations with interchangeable mission modules. Mine countermeasures vessels. The U.S. Navy operates specialized mine warfare ships, Avenger-class mine countermeasures vessels, that would be critical for clearing Iranian mines from the strait. These use sonar, remotely operated vehicles, and mine neutralization systems to clear shipping channels. But mine clearance under fire from Iranian missiles and boats would be extremely dangerous and slow. MH-60S helicopters. These conduct airborne mine countermeasures using towed sonar and mine detection systems, providing faster coverage than surface vessels alone. But helicopters conducting low-altitude mine hunting operations would be vulnerable to Iranian surface-to-air missiles and anti-aircraft fire. Submarines. Virginia-class or Los Angeles-class attack submarines would operate in the Gulf and surrounding waters, hunting Iranian Kilo-class submarines, conducting intelligence gathering, and potentially launching Tomahawk strikes against Iranian coastal positions. In shallow Persian Gulf waters, American submarine advantages diminish because acoustic conditions favor defenders who know local waters. P-8 Poseidon Maritime Patrol Aircraft. These land-based aircraft would conduct anti-submarine warfare, dropping sonobuoys and prosecuting Iranian submarine contacts with torpedoes. They would operate from bases in nearby Gulf states, providing persistent coverage of Gulf waters. Carrier Air Wing. F-A-18 Super Hornets and F-35C Lightning IIs launched from carriers in the Gulf of Oman would conduct strikes against Iranian coastal positions, suppress air defenses, and provide air cover for surface ships. But aircraft conducting strikes against targets near populated areas face risks of collateral damage and potential loss to Iranian air defenses. Tomahawk cruise missiles. Surface ships and submarines would launch these against Iranian missile sites, command centers, and naval bases in the opening hours of conflict, attempting to destroy Iranian capabilities before they can threaten American forces. But mobile missile launchers hidden in mountainous terrain are difficult to locate and destroy before they fire. Moving on to the geographic realities that shape this confrontation. The Strait of Hormuz geography. 21 miles wide at the narrowest point, with shipping lanes only 2 miles wide in each direction, separated by a 2-mile buffer zone. Water depths are shallow, often less than 100 meters, creating acoustic conditions that complicate submarine and anti-submarine operations. Iranian territory dominates the northern shore, while Omani territory controls the southern side. Iranian missiles and surveillance systems, positioned on heights overlooking the strait, can track every ship transiting the chokepoint. This geographic advantage means Iran can threaten shipping without deploying forces into open water, where American firepower dominates. Confined waters. The Persian Gulf is relatively shallow and confined compared to open ocean, where U.S. Navy advantages are overwhelming. Carrier groups can't maneuver freely, submarine operations face acoustic complications, and Iranian forces can operate close to their coastline, where support and resupply are easier. These conditions reduce American advantages in sensors, weapons range, and blue water capability. Iranian coastal geography. Mountainous terrain along the Iranian coastline provides natural protection for missile sites, observation posts, and military installations. Mobile missile launchers can hide in valleys and caves, launch attacks, and relocate before counterstrikes arrive. This makes suppressing Iranian fire extremely difficult without sustained air campaigns that risk collateral damage in populated areas. Moving on to what would actually happen. Initial Iranian actions. If conflict begins, Iran would immediately attempt to mine the strait using submarines, small boats, and potentially aircraft dropping mines at night. Simultaneously, they would launch anti-ship missiles from coastal batteries and boats, targeting American vessels and commercial shipping. Swarm boat attacks would follow, with dozens or hundreds of small craft attempting coordinated attacks on American ships. This would be combined with ballistic missile attacks against American bases in the region, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, attempting to suppress American air power and create chaos. U.S. response. American forces would conduct immediate strikes against Iranian naval bases, missile sites, and command centers using Tomahawk cruise missiles from ships and submarines. Carrier-based aircraft would establish air superiority and conduct suppression of enemy air defenses. Destroyers and cruisers would engage Iranian missiles and boats with defensive systems, while submarines hunt Iranian submarines. Mine countermeasures forces would begin the slow process of clearing mines from shipping lanes. Cost calculation. Could the U.S. Navy defeat Iranian forces? Absolutely. American firepower, technology, and training would destroy Iranian naval capabilities within days. But the question isn't whether America wins, it's what the victory costs. Every day the strait remains contested or closed. Global oil prices spike. Insurance companies refuse to cover tanker transits through war zones. Even temporary closure creates economic damage measured in hundreds of billions. If Iran sinks a single tanker with mines or missiles, the psychological effect on shipping markets exceeds the physical damage. American ships would likely suffer some damage. Mines are difficult to avoid completely. Missile saturation attacks might overwhelm defenses, and suicide boat attacks could succeed against ships that aren't perfectly positioned. And alert. Casualties would occur on both sides, though American losses would be limited compared to Iranian devastation. Aftermath. Iran's navy would be destroyed, their coastal military infrastructure devastated, and their ability to threaten shipping eliminated, for months or years until they rebuild. But those weeks or months of conflict would disrupt global energy markets, potentially trigger recession, and create humanitarian crises. The strait would be littered with mines requiring months to clear, even after combat operations end. Commercial shipping would avoid the region until insurance companies declare it safe, forcing oil to transit around Africa at enormous cost. This is Iran's deterrent, not the ability to win militarily, but the ability to inflict economic costs that make attacking them extremely expensive, even in victory. Moving on to the realistic assessment. The U.S. Navy would dominate any military confrontation in the Strait of Hormuz because American technological superiority, firepower, and training are overwhelming. Iranian surface ships would be destroyed within hours. Submarines would be hunted and sunk within days. Coastal missile sites would be suppressed through sustained air and cruise missile strikes. But Iran doesn't need to win militarily. They need to close the strait long enough to create global economic crisis and demonstrate that attacking Iran carries costs that exceed benefits. Mines achieve that goal even if every Iranian ship is sunk. A single tanker destroyed by mine or missile achieves strategic effect disproportionate to the weapon cost. This is why the strait remains contested despite American military superiority. Because winning the military battle doesn't prevent economic catastrophe, and Iran has spent decades preparing for exactly this asymmetric conflict where American advantages matter less than geographic realities and willingness to accept losses.